according to Matthew.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Now Jesus said before the crowds another parable. The kingdom of heaven may be compared to someone who sowed good seed in his field. However, while everyone was sleeping, an enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat, and then went away. So when the plants grew up and bore grain, then the weeds appeared as well. One of the slaves of the householder came and said to him, "Master, did you not plant good seed in your field? Where then did all these weeds come from?" He answered, "An enemy has done this." Then the slave said, "Then do you want us to go and gather them in?" The householder said, "No, for in gathering in the weeds, you would also uproot the wheat along with them. Let both of them grow together until the harvest, and at the harvest time I will tell the reapers, 'Collect the weeds first, and bind them into bundles to be burned, but gather the wheat into my barn.'" Then Jesus left the crowds and went into the house. His disciples approached him, saying, "Explain to us the parable of the weeds of the field." And he answered, "The one who sowed the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world, and the good seed are the children of the kingdom. The weeds are the children of the evil one, and the enemy who sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age, and the reapers are angels. Just as the weeds were gathered and burned in the fire, so it will be at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send his angels, and they will collect out of his kingdom all causes of sin and all evildoers, and will throw them into the furnace of fire, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. But the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Let anyone with ears listen. The gospel of the Lord."
Praise to you, O Christ.
One of the professional hazards of being a pastor is the temptation to think that you're a superhero, or are supposed to be. Many of us slip into thinking that we can and should fix all of the problems facing our congregations. That it's our job to heal every broken heart. It's our job to get everyone to worship. It's our job to fix every conflict that arises. It's our job to make everybody happy. But of course, none of us succeeds at this. It's just not possible. And it just leads to feeling out of control and powerless. And I don't think it's just pastors. I think teachers sometimes feel that it's their job to get every kid to learn, even the ones who just can't or just won't. I think farmers sometimes think it's their job to make every crop yield in abundance, no matter what the weather or the growing conditions are. I think retailers sometimes think it's their job to make sure that every customer is happy, even the ones who make demands that nobody can fill. I think parents sometimes think it's their job to make sure their children are completely safe and always making good choices. I think older people sometimes think it's their job to be as busy as they were when they were younger, even though their bodies aren't the same as they used to be. And when someone close to us dies, how often do we say, "I should have done something differently," as though we could have stopped death? In the face of death and in the face of life, we so often feel responsible for so much, but we can't do it. We feel out of control and powerless. A landowner sowed seed in his field. It was going to be a beautiful field, full of life, full of grain, full of hope. And his workers, they were ready. They knew their job. They had the skills and the strength and the know-how. They were in control. But overnight, things changed. Overnight, an enemy came and planted this poisonous weed there. Why? Well, who knows? But now the field was different. It still had life. It still had grain. It still had hope. But now it also had poison and misery and confusion. And the workers, they wanted to fix it right away. But the boss said no. No, don't do that. The wheat and the weeds look the same. You'll pull out the wheat too. And even if you could tell the difference, their roots are so intertwined that if you pull out the evil, you'll pull out so much of the good as well. The boss said no. Be patient. I know about the problem. I know what I'm doing. I will take care of this, but in my time and in my way. And I think that's the world we live in, a world that is beautiful, a world that has life and hope and joy, but a world that also has suffering. We live with disease and worry. Our marriages are strained. Our children break our hearts. Our churches are divided. Our nation is divided. There is war, there is hunger, there is injustice, and there is nothing good on TV. And we feel out of control and powerless. But our faith tells us that God is kind of like the boss in this story. God knows about the suffering and evil in the world. God knows every leaf on every tree, every hair on your head. And God cares. And God will fix it, but in God's time and in God's way. Our faith tells us that we are out of control, but God is in control. Our faith tells us that God has a plan, even if that plan has a timeline different from our own. Now that doesn't mean that God's plan includes suffering. Remember, it was the enemy who planted the weeds, not the household. But God's plan means that despite those weeds, justice will be done. Every sin will be brought to light, and every person who suffered unjustly will be redeemed. God will take care of judgment, and God will take care of the harvest. And when that harvest comes in, we will be invited to a heavenly banquet. But we don't have to just sit here and wait for that. God invites us today to the first course of that banquet, a course of bread and wine. This tiny wafer, these drops of wine that we will share are not just a tonic pill to get us through the week. They are the first course of the banquet that awaits us at the harvest, when God's will is made complete. The Lord's Supper is literally a taste of heaven. It's an hors d'oeuvre. Holy Communion is the cocktail hour of heaven. And when we share it, when we ingest heaven together, we are proclaiming that the full banquet is coming. We don't know when, but it's coming. When we share communion, we are proclaiming that this is but the beginning. We're proclaiming that God is in control. And we're proclaiming that we are not. And that we don't have to be. And that we were never supposed to be. And that sets us free from being powerless. We may not be in control, but we are not powerless. We are the seed that the landowner planted. And we have a job to do. Our job is to grow, to bear fruit, to become the people God made us to be. And that means we can do the best we can. But then we trust God to actually take care of it. In the case of parenting, I do my best with my children. And that's not always enough. But my best is all I'm ever supposed to do. I have a very important role to play in raising these children, but it's not truly my job to take care of them. That's God's job. And the same is true of me as your pastor, and the same is true in every aspect of our lives. We're not in control. God is. And that is freedom. And God calls us to share that freedom with the rest of the world. And here's one simple way to do that. When someone tells you that we don't have control over this world anymore, you can tell them, you're right. You're absolutely right. But God does. Now, I can't always see that. I can't always touch that. But I believe it. And this morning, I tasted it. I trust God. You can too.